Hello, this is Rashad Mitchell on the Rashad Mitchell Show for Friday, February the 19th. I'm here to talk about whatever is on my mind, whatever is on my heart right now. Almost close to the end of the month. I'm just going to get into what took place last night between the Bulls and the Cavaliers. And the Cavaliers won by double digits. They handled their business. It's just self-explanatory. Right now, when you look at Cleveland is just playing at a higher level than the Bulls. The Bulls just dealing with too many injuries, too many inconsistencies that's coming from that team. They're not going to make a big run. I think this is the conference that Cleveland should win. But it's all about what they do outside of the Eastern Conference when they face the Golden State Warriors, who I think will represent the Western Conference, because they're just unbeatable, unstoppable. They're a juggernaut. But anyway, this is the 11th episode of Rashad Mitchell's show. I did call it the Mitchell Report, but I'm going to change it up to the Rashad Mitchell Show. Just make it plain and simple, Rashad Mitchell Show. And on this Friday, I'm just going to get into, like I said, the Cleveland Cavaliers won last night, and then the Clippers won impressively, got it done against the Spurs. But the Clippers have a lot to prove in the postseason. That's obvious. They got a lot of talent, but they got to prove themselves in the postseason. It's the same way Oklahoma City has to prove himself. San Antonio has to prove themselves as well. They have not won a championship in a couple of years. They got to represent themselves as well, that they can beat Golden State if they was to meet in the best of 7. But like I said, it's all about the postseason. As the second half of the NBA season is getting it going and rolling along, it's a matter of just one thing: who's gonna beat Golden State? Because Golden State, if they keep playing like they did in the first half, they started the season 24-0, and they're 48-4 since then. They started 24-0 and they lost that game to Milwaukee. They had a chance to break the longest winning streak in NBA history that was set by the 72 Los Angeles Lakers that had Gail Goodrich and Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain, guys like that. And they fell short, but they still a dominant team. And the way I see it, I just think that everything goes through Golden State. So that's the story on that with the NBA. I think tonight Golden State plays Portland tonight. See how they do on this road trip. If they can survive and try to win, go for that 72 wins, 73 wins, 74 wins. They're definitely capable. They don't lose at home. They're undefeated at home. At their place, they are unbeatable. Nobody has beaten them this year, and I think they're going to keep that winning streak going. Because I don't see they might go undefeated at home. The way they're playing right now, they are totally undefeated. They're great on the road as well. Obviously, they lost 4 games this year. 4 of the games were on the road. And here's what it is. I think when you look at their 4 losses, they lost to Dallas, Milwaukee, and lost to Denver. And they lost to Detroit, I think. Detroit, Dallas, Denver, and Milwaukee. So they lost to 2 teams in the Eastern Conference and 2 teams in the Western Conference. Detroit and Milwaukee, not big time teams in the Eastern Conference, and in the West they lose to They lost to Dallas and Denver. So they haven't lost to any big time teams, the elite ball clubs like the Clippers, and they haven't lost to the Spurs. They haven't lost to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've been able to represent themselves well. So it is what it is. When you look at the Golden State Warriors, it's just self-explanatory how great they're playing the game of basketball. You can't hate on this team. The way they play team ball is admirable. Pat Riley would love this team. Red Auerbach would love this team. It's just the way they move the ball, where they share the ball. There's no ego tripping. It doesn't matter if Steph Curry not doing his thing. As long as they getting contributions from a guy like Klay Thompson or Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, that's the thing that makes them dangerous, is that the core four: Iguodala, Thompson, Curry, and Green. Those four guys, man, they the ones that's going to be the danger to anybody, because those four guys know how to play. Unless they got Harrison Barnes, unless they got Andrew Bogut and Leandro Barbosa. But the four guys that makes this offense go are obviously the backcourt of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Then you got Draymond Green and you got Andre Iguodala. If those four are clicking and making it happen, they're unstoppable. They're going to be hard to beat this year. So that's the story on the Golden State Warriors. I wanted to get into my books. I can go from the top of my head. Check out my top 50 hip-hop groups of all time, man. Those who like the hip-hop groups, when groups were groups, go check that out, man. I got so many great groups. I wrote that book a couple years ago, but it's still relevant because there are no such thing as hip-hop groups today. Everything is mostly a solo act for the most part, but there's no great groups in hip-hop. Back in the day when I was growing up, watching Video Music Box, Rap City, Yo MTV Raps, you had NWA, Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, EPMD, 3 Times Dope, A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Jungle Brothers. It was a golden era of groups, man, when groups just did things together. No matter what was going on with the creative tension, they was able to do things together as a unit and make great music as a unit. Today, it's all solo to me. Maybe I'm out of touch, but I wouldn't trade places with today's generation, with the music, with the dances. I'm happy that I was born earlier, before the 90s or 80s. You know what I'm saying? It's great to be before that era, because I grew up where groups were groups, music was music. Even R&B is not the same as it once was. It's just not the same. And rightfully so. You evolve in music. You don't keep doing things from the past. But there's nothing wrong with carrying on the tradition of the past and bring it into a certain way, music-wise. But the way it is today, man, it's just not the same. But once again, this is the Rashad Mitchell Show. That's what I'm going to call it for now on. I'm not going to call it the Mitchell Report. I'm going to switch it up and just make it simplistic as I can. The Rashad Mitchell Show. That's what this show is going to be called for now on. Again, I'm just going to keep going with this show. It's going to be a great time doing this show. I'm going to do another show later on at 5 o'clock. The schedule, I already laid that out already. I'm going to be putting out shows every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 5 o'clock p.m. And hopefully I can fulfill that obligation. And I might, just do another show before that. But either way, I'm going to be doing the podcast of the Rashad Mitchell Show on Spreaker.com every Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, every Thursday, every Friday, every Saturday. And we're going to be doing all the time this podcast because I'm trying to get myself back into the groove of getting my stuff out there. Just doing my job to just promote my books, expose my brand, and share my knowledge with people who are listening right now, if they are, about history. Whether it's in the music, whether it's in sports, whatever it is that's on my mind, I'm going to talk about it. And that's what it's all about. That's basically it right now. I'm just keep doing my thing with this show. It's been a long time coming. I did 2 shows last night. I did checked out what's going on, talked about what's going on in the NBA, talked about what's going on in college basketball. Then I got into the All-Star game. Matter of fact, since I'm on the subject, thinking about it, I have not discussed the Super Bowl. Now, when I picked Denver to win the Super Bowl 50, 24-17. And obviously I was correct with the amount of points that Denver scored. I was incorrect with the amount of points that Carolina was going to score. I thought they was going to score 17, instead they scored 10. Here's how it goes with me. My perspective with this Super Bowl is that Denver's defense is great. They're one of the greatest defenses ever. I think before the Super Bowl, I picked Denver because of their defense. The team with the number 1 defense historically in Super Bowl history is 9-2. They won 9 of the 11 Super Bowls whenever they faced an offense that was number 1 in the league. And they pulled it off. They was able to get after Cam Newton. Von Miller was the MVP. 2.5 sacks. I think he had like 2 forced fumbles. I don't know how many tackles he had, but he was a wrecking crew. And he wasn't all by himself. Obviously, Marcus Ware chipped in with a couple of sacks himself. Former Cowboy, rightfully deserved his Super Bowl. He was able to get his Super Bowl. Give him credit. Give credit to Wade Phillips for making it happen with the defensive game plan that he put together against Cam Newton. And there's no way around it, man. I just think that Denver was the better team through and through. I never had a doubt in my mind that Denver was going to lose this game. I knew they was going to win. I didn't think they would shut them down completely like this, but give all the credit to Denver Broncos. They're not a great team, but they are a good team that fought hard, scrapped, held it down despite the struggles of Peyton Manning. They continued to hold it down all year long from that first game against Baltimore. The only slippage or mishap they had this year was against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They put up a lot of points. They couldn't handle Antonio Brown, but other than that, they played great defense all year long. They held the Pittsburgh Steelers the Pittsburgh Steelers offense intact. They held them down. Also, they did the same thing to the Patriots. They was heroic. Brady was heroic. Gronkowski was heroic, but they held them to 18 points. And then they shut down the MVP, and Cam Newton held them to 10 points. And again, Carolina might go down as one of the most overrated 15-1 teams ever to play the game. Not only that, they might go down as one of the best 15-1 teams not to win the Super Bowl. They could be in that category at both sides, because Carolina surprised a lot of people. They played over their heads. Nobody thought that Cam Newton, of all people, would win the MVP. They was very, very sneaky, and they didn't have a tough schedule. their division was bad. The NFC South with Tampa Bay, New Orleans Saints, and you had Carolina, obviously. You had Atlanta Falcons. I mean, none of those teams made to the playoffs, except Carolina in that division, if my memory serves me correctly, because in the NFC playoffs, you had Carolina, Seattle, Arizona, Green Bay, Minnesota, teams like that. Now, I don't think none of those teams outside Carolina in that division reached the playoffs. So, to me, right there and there, I mean, shows you that the NFC was the NFC South was so bad. And again, you can't blame them for having a 15-1 season, but their body of work was not that impressive. I think they, snuck up on a lot of people. Cam Newton had the season of his career. I mean, I don't know how you're going to top that next year, but it is what it is. I think Denver was a better team. Defense wins championships, and it goes to show, man, in these Super Bowls, you got to play defense to win championships. You can't just rely on offense. You can have a high-power offense. All the years I've been watching the Super Bowl, I've seen the 07 Patriots lose to the Giants. I've seen the 11 Patriots lose to the Giants. And I've seen the 2002, the 02 Raiders lose to the number one defense in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those examples, man, the Giants, I think they had the number one defense, scoring defense. In 1990 against the Buffalo Bills, they had that high-power offense. They have scored, 51 points against the Raiders. Either way, the defense has to get it done. You got to have a defense to make things happen. And I just think that across the board, man, you got to have a defense to win a Super Bowl. And it's a balance that is needed in the NFL. In the era of all these offenses is, throwing 50 times or 40 times, throwing the ball 30 times, you're always going to have something going on with the pass rush. The pass rush is going to have ample opportunities to get after the quarterback. No matter what, they're going to get after the quarterback because due to the fact that it's a quarterback's league, you don't run the ball like you used to. I mean, the running backs that was in this Super Bowl are not household names. Jonathan Stewart, Ronnie Hillman, C.J. Anderson, who had 90 yards rushing. Yes, he made his presence felt, scored a touchdown, but he's not Terrell Davis, he's not Floyd Little, he's not Jim Brown, he's not Franco Harris. He's just, a running back. He was not a big name. So I just think that defense wins championships, and see what happens with Peyton Manning. Obviously, he's in some hot water with what happened with the lady that felt she was disrespected in a sexual way. Lewd conduct from men that was allegedly brought against him, a lawsuit and whatever. Again, I mean, young teenagers are going to make mistakes. No one's perfect, but I mean, I don't understand why wait till now to talk about that. That news to be out, but hey, obviously the lady didn't like you. I think it was some other ladies that had some complaints as well, but it is what it is. I think Peyton Manning is the greatest regular season quarterback ever. He will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think he should retire. I don't think he should be playing in the NFL next year. I think he has two Super Bowls to go to his resume. I don't think he needs to prove anything to anyone after all the body of work that he's put in throughout his career. Plus he's beaten Brady 3 out of 4 times in the AFC Championship game, so he's done his thing. You can't go undefeated in the playoffs. And another thing that stands out with Peyton Manning, for the first time in his career, he had a defense that was a great defense. He never had that. When he was with the Colts, he had Dwight Freeney. Yes, he had Robert Mathis, Bob Sanders, but he never had a great defense as a Colt. Finally, for the first time in his career, he had a great defense to carry him. Truly a great defense, not some average defense, but a great defense. So I think he deserves to walk right into the sunset, win a championship, and no longer come back. I think that should be his decision. Obviously, I can't make decisions for him, but I think he will retire. That's my opinion. Like I said, I mean, that Super Bowl was not a great Super Bowl. It was one of the worst Super Bowls ever played. It had no ebbs and flows to the game. It was very sloppy. A lot of mistakes, a lot of penalties, turnovers as well. And Cam Newton was out of line with his post-game comments, how he acted, how he conducted himself. You can't be smiling and doing that when things are going well. When you lose, you gotta be professional. You cannot be unprofessional. You can't be sulking and pouting and wearing a hood over your head. You know, that's not uncalled for. That's not called for. You gotta be professional, and I think he will learn from this. He has no other choice. And Cam had a great season. I mean, he had a great season. You know, it is what it is. You know, he did his thing. But the bottom line is that it's all about growing up as a leader, as a player, and just improving on this year and making sure next year is not a fluke. So Carolina had a great season, but hey, they ran to a buzzsaw in a defense that was great for the ages. There's no way to say it. I mean, they was not the greatest defense of all time, but they was a great defense for this year. You know, they truly represented what a defense is about. So see what happens in the off season with the NFL and see if Denver can reload again. You know, they're gonna have to probably replace a guy like Peyton Manning with Brock Osweiler and take it from there. It happens. As far as Carolina, I think they got to resign Josh Norman. I think he a free agent or something like that, but we'll see. But that's the storyline with the NFL. I didn't get a chance to speak about the Super Bowl 50. It was great to see Super Bowl 50, but the game was not well played. It wasn't a classic. It was a great defensive performance by the Denver Broncos. So that's their third Super Bowl in their history. And Carolina's still winless in Super Bowls. They are 0-2 now. So that's the story on them. Like I said, I'm a writer, self-published author of 39 books. If anybody likes the kind of books that I like, you go to Rashad Mitchell's books on Facebook. Go to the website, and it will direct you right to the author page. And if you like hip-hop books, poetry books, if you like R&B books, if you like NFL books, man, I got it for you if you like it. A lot of wealth of knowledge, a lot of wealth of information that is needed. My show's gonna be on YouTube as well. I got most of my podcasts uploaded on YouTube. If you want to listen to it. If you missed the show right now and the show that I'm going to do later, you can go back and listen to it on I will upload it on YouTube. So like I said, it's just great to be back in the saddle. It's my third show of this year. I did about 9 last year. But it's this year, it's a new year, and looking forward to doing great things this year as a host of my own show, the Rashad Mitchell's Show, the Rashad Mitchell Show. And just great to be back on Speaker. It's just a great time to be back on, and I'm gonna keep talking about whatever is on my mind, on my heart, whatever it is that I'm gonna talk about. I'm definitely gonna represent myself. Now, last night, as a recap, the second show, I did some poetry. I had typed in on my tablet about Masterpiece Theater. Then I did a overlook an overview of my blogs that I write for the Gyroscope Media Group magazine. I wrote a lot of blogs for that, and more blogs that are coming soon that's not even published yet. I did one on the Orangeburg Massacre. My father went to South Carolina State, and he was a sophomore, I think, at the time when those law enforcement officers, start shooting the students. And the students was just trying to protest against a bowling alley that was segregated. They wanted to be treated as human beings, as having their rights to be able to do their part, to just enjoy themselves at a bowling alley. I don't think my father, was into bowling, but I don't know if he was a protester. I'm quite sure he was involved in some way or some capacity. He was there. And then I got into Lorraine Hansberry, looked at 4 women who I felt deserves their just due, because next month in March is National Women's Month or something like that, Women's History Month. I did a blog about Mariam Makeba. She was an African freedom fighter. Lorraine Hansberry, who did the play Raising in the Sun, I think died way too young at age 34. Then I did Abby Lincoln, who was in the movie Nothing But a Man. She was an actress. I think she was an activist. And then Nina Simone, who was the High Priestess of Soul, was an activist in a sense. She did her thing. So like vlogs like that, man, I'm just always gonna bring a historical perspective on these kind of blogs. I talked about Marlon Brando. The thing about this guy is that, yes, he was a great actor, might have been the greatest actor ever, but what's overlooked about him to me is his contributions as a civil rights activist, supporting the Black Panther Party. Who would thought a white person would do that? Most people back then probably thought the Black Panthers were a militant, anti-white group, but they wasn't. If you watch the Vanguard of the Revolution on PBS on Channel 13, which I watched on this week on Tuesday, these guys were supported by Jane Fonda, Marlon Brando. A lot of white people got on board with them. A lot of Hispanics support them. Still have it DVR'd on my TV. Yeah, that was a great documentary about the Black Panthers, because they were about something. They wanted to defend themselves. They got inspired by a guy named Robert F. Williams. Robert F. Williams was a guy who was a civil rights hero, who's unsung in his own right. But not only that, he was into self-defense, and he wrote a book called Negroes with Guns. And that was an inspirational book for the Black Panthers, for Huey Newton to go on with that philosophy and add that onto what he was doing, him and Bobby Seale. So, the Black Panthers were about feeding the kids with the breakfast, they health and all that. They wanted something, but they just did it in different ways. That was different from the civil rights movement and nonviolent struggle that Dr. King adhered to. They just had their own ideology of how to get great results and what they stood for, and they did that. But the documentary was outstanding, and it's just that there's always going to be dissension. It was messed up to see that Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver could not see eye to eye. They could not agree on anything. They had to have their factions and their dissensions and tensions against each other, and they had to, have a falling out. And J. Edgar Hoover got what he wanted. He wanted to break up the militant groups, the groups that were standing up for something, with COINTELPRO, counterintelligence. He wanted to wipe out the radical groups that was doing it, what they were doing back then. He wanted to make up stuff to try to pin the groups against each other, to try to hate each other and be against each other, which he accomplished a great deal of that. So that documentary was a great documentary. Huey Newton was a great leader. Bobby Seale was great. Elaine Brown was great. Kathleen Cleaver was great. Elwich Cleaver. All of them was great. You know, they did their thing. It's just that it didn't last long due to dissensions and the COINTELPRO, Fred Hampton. What they did to him was absolutely disgraceful. You know, going into his house like the thief in the night and killing him in cold blood. You know, killing him in cold blood, and that's a bad thing. Killing him in cold blood, and I think that's a tragic situation to see that. To see a Fred Hampton die like that. I'm not surprised because that was on Eyes on the Prize. I remember Eyes on the Prize, they used to talk about the Black Panthers and what they stood for, and Fred Hampton, how he was killed like that in Chicago. So seeing William O'Neill, who was an FBI informant at the time. But again, the Black Panthers will always be misunderstood. Always will be misunderstood because they stood for something, it just did it in a different way than most people give them credit for. So I just think that they are misunderstood 100%. Probably more than any group that ever was involved in the civil rights struggle. You know, they was part of the Black Power movement, obviously, but they was not anti-white. I mean, they did things with white people. If they were so racist, how come they allowed Marlon Brando or Jane Fonda to support them? You know, they were so anti-white, they could have said, hey, Marlon Brando, get out of here. But no, they was open to whites supporting what they were doing. Latinos. So they were very influential in their style, their look, the black berets, the leather jackets, the afro, the sunglasses. I mean, they had a sense of coolness about them, a sense of attitude about them that was of the streets. You know, that was very soulful, that was very not non-conservative, but out there. You know, they was free in who they were. They did not leave a stone unturned. So those who want to check out the PBS documentary, I don't know if it's on YouTube or not, but there's a documentary about the Black Panthers, the vanguard of the revolution. And I saw it this past Tuesday. I DVR'd it, still got it on my DVR. It was a great time. And again, in a proper perspective, I don't blame the Black Panthers for doing what they did, because at that time, Black Americans was under the attack. Man, you had Birmingham movement where Bull Connor sent the fire hoses and dogs seeking them on black people. You know, you had a lot of brutality going on back then. A lot of brutality, a lot of violence. A lot of people died for the right to vote. But the turning of the cheek, that wasn't the way of the Black Panthers. They wanted to defend themselves. They knew that in Oakland, California, it was very violent with the police. The brutality that was going on was just the same as what was going on in the South. It was in the West Coast side of things that you had the brutality that was taking place. So you had to have something had to change, something had to get better. And this is the 50th anniversary of the Black Panthers starting their group in 1966. I think in October of 1966, the Black Panther Party began. So they was able to conjure up a 10-point program. What they wanted full employment. They wanted justice. They wanted housing, fair housing. They was against, the military service. I mean, they was for something. Everything was organized in detail. They was, understanding, they understood what they were doing. And it's just that Elvis Cleaver, I think he was the guy that was more into guns and just coming at people, maybe in certain ways. Because again, there was a lot of disagreements between Cleaver and Newton in the early 70s. But they were different. I mean, they were very influential in what they stood for. They were a phenomenon. They were on cover magazines like Jet magazine or any publication you could find back in the day. They covered the Black Panthers because they were fascinating. Because, on May 2nd, 1967, they go and carry guns to make a statement that, hey, we have a right to bear arms and defend ourselves. So they go up to the state capitol in California when Ronald Reagan was the governor, and they just didn't care. They just had no care about what people thought of them. You know what I'm saying? They just stood for something, and hey, that's what the climate was back then. It was time for young people not being all into this nonviolent stuff, because it was going to happen. Also, this is the 50th anniversary of when Stokely Carmichael said we want Black Power in 1966. He just felt that was something needed to be different than Dr. King. He marched with Dr. King. He criticized Dr. King. He didn't like Dr. King's ideology of nonviolence, turn your other cheek. But he just felt that it was best for him to chant that Black Power. In 1966, that was the James Meredith March against fear, where he got shot. So when you look at that aspect, man, that was scary. I think that made the cover of Jet magazine. So Dr. King and Carmichael come in and try to take over and do their thing. But it is what it is, man. That was what it was. It's history. But you cannot, turn it aside. It's just only 50 years ago that situation took place. So, just salute and respect the people that stood up for something. I don't blame the Black Panthers for doing what they were doing back then. I think they just wanted to go in another direction. It was like Malcolm X. Malcolm X was into by any means necessary. Dr. King was into we shall overcome. The promised land, all of that stuff. They were no different in different ways, and that's what made them different. So, again, I just thank God that I wasn't born during that time, because I don't know if I'd be alive. I'm just thankful that my mother and my dad got through those times, because my dad was a baby boomer. He was born in 1947. My mother was born in 1953. That could have been them being sprayed with water hoses and attacked by police dogs in Birmingham. That could have been them. But by the grace of God, that didn't happen. That could have been my dad shot up by law enforcement officers on the campus of on the campus of South Carolina State, where he attended college. He was able to graduate class of 1970. So it's just a blessing that I had two parents that survived the ugliness of segregation and racial segregation that was going on at that time. It was just God ordained for them to be here, to have me and Deshaun be here on this earth. So rest in peace to my dad. Rest in peace to Delano Middleton, Henry Smith, and Samuel Hammonds, who stood up for something against a segregated bowling alley. Fortunately, they died, but they didn't die in vain, because they stood up for something. To protest against a segregated bowling alley that blacks were not allowed to participate or be in. And then again, this was 4 years after the Civil Rights Act was passed. The Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964. But still, in the 60s, it was still segregation. It was still places where blacks were not allowed to do certain things. But by the grace of God, man, I'm just happy that my father made it through. He was able to live 66 years on this earth. I wish he was still here, but God doesn't make mistakes. And you deal with the situation and you move on. I miss my dad, I mean, no doubt. But I'm not going to be looking for no pity party. People pass away. It's a matter of being ready for death. Because we all going to leave here someday. Well, it's all about being ready to leave here someday. You know, I got to live for the Lord. I got to live a righteous lifestyle. Now, as I conclude this podcast, yeah, you got to live right, man. You got to live right in God's sight. I mean, you got to do the right thing. You got to keep God in your life. You got to be born again. If Jesus is not Lord of your life, man, you're not going to be ready to face the judgment that is going to be brought upon yourself. Because only God can judge us. We're going to stand before him and give an account for the life that we led on this earth. Not to other people. It's not going to be based on popularity, prestige. It's going to be about whether we were faithful to the Lord in some capacity based on how we lived our lives. So, I just thank the Lord that I'm saved, that I'm born again, Holy Ghost filled and fire baptized, and just gotta keep my character intact. As I close this podcast for today, I'm definitely gonna try to do another one at 5 o'clock, because I set up a schedule where I'm gonna be doing the podcast at 5 o'clock Mondays to Saturdays, not on Sundays. So that's how it's gonna be. I'm going to definitely come up with different things to talk about on the podcast later on today. Maybe get into some of my books. Maybe do some reciting of the poetry. Maybe get into the NFL books or R&B books and just do what comes to mind. Maybe, you know, get into some football, look at a certain player in NFL history, or get into some NBA basketball. Look at you know, a certain player that doesn't get their just due as an NBA player. But whatever it is, it's not going to be a boring podcast. That's all I got to say about that. So as we wind down, this is the Rashad Mitchell Show. The Rashad Mitchell Show. It's not going to be the Mitchell Report. It's going to be the Rashad Mitchell Show. And it's going to be a show that's going to focus on sports, history, music, whatever comes to mind. Rashad Mitchell is definitely going to do it. He's going to represent. So this is the Rashad Mitchell Show. Again, check me out on Facebook, Rashad Mitchell. Check me out on Rashad Mitchell's books on Facebook. Visit the author page that's on Rashad Mitchell's books and support. You know, if you like the books that I have, check it out and buy it. Check me out on Gyroscope Media Group magazine. Go to the website, www.gmgmagazine.com. I'm saying check that out. If you want to check out my blogs or check out the other writings, it's not about me. You got other people writing blogs, representing themselves, got a message to send to people, to the readers. You know, check their stuff out. Check out anything that's up there. So as this show winds down, I thank for those who are listening and those who are going to listen later. Check it out. Represent. I'm back in the flesh and doing my thing with this podcast. And as we close, I'd like to thank those who are listening. You know, keep on listening. Those who didn't listen, we're gonna listen later. This should be on YouTube and also be on Facebook and Twitter. If you want to, you know, look at it, listen to it, Tumblr, Google, it's gonna be there. So this is Rashad Mitchell for February the 19th. I will be back later at 5 o'clock to do another podcast from the Rashad Mitchell Show. Until then, signing off. God bless.